Hey everybody, Charles from GMAT Ninja here to talk about the testing experiences of a pretty phenomenal student. This is Pearl, and we're going to talk about her background because I think she has a little bit of an unusual and super interesting background, and she improved by 100 points on the GMAT. Pearl, thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, Charles. Thank you so much for having me. I used to watch a lot of these videos when I was prepping, so I'm hopeful that someone finds something useful and learns from this.
Awesome, and I do think you hit on some things that are extremely common. So we're going to go through your background a little bit. We're going to talk about the materials you used, and then talk about what really made it work for you on test day. And just to tease a little bit of where we're going to take this. So for anybody who has had a bad test day where you go, hey, I know what I'm doing, but I scored 20, 50, 80, 100 points lower than I deserved or I'm capable of, listen to what Pearl has to say, because she went through that, has a lot to say about it. And also, Pearl has used almost every material there is out there. So if you want to know which materials worked for her from different companies, this is the video for you. All right, before we get into all that, Pearl, just tell us, where are you? What do you do for a living? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I am currently in Egypt. I am from India. I did aerospace engineering in India. I did a little bit of 0 to 1 work, startups, new product lines. And right now I'm working in a public policy consultancy company in Egypt. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
And then what would you like to do post-master's degree? What would you like from your master's degree?
These experiences have shaped me to realize that, something in product management is going to be most suited to my skill set and what I want to basically, like my future long-term goals. So they're going to help me with the skill set I need to acquire. So that's the best for me.
Awesome. And Pearl and I chatting before we started the cameras rolling here. She speaks 4 languages fluently. So Pearl, please brag about all the languages you speak and tell us how you got there.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm from India. I speak Hindi as my mother tongue and English, of course. Everyone speaks English, or many people speak English. I speak Arabic because I live in Egypt. So بتكلم عربي or مصري كويس قوي. Some fun fact is that if you hear, like a lot of people have told me that they cannot identify that I'm a foreigner from my Arabic. And that's all thanks to all the immersion I got growing up here. And I speak French. It was also something that was mandatory in my school. I had to give my exams, and I've been very fortunate to speak so many languages, and I'm really going to benefit from these as I apply for European Masters now. Yeah.
Awesome. So if anybody watching this has an opening for a project manager who has a background in aerospace engineering, public policy, and speaks 4 languages, this is your lady. She also crushed the GMAT. All right, let's talk about that GMAT thing. So tell us about kind of how this whole process started. So you had a full 2-year adventure with the GMAT. Tell us what got you into it at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it was my longest commitment yet. So I started January 2024 when I realized that full-time opportunities in the job market wasn't looking too great. So I wanted to maybe put my effort somewhere where I was sure I would get a return. So I started there. I was very on and off. I was not diligent at all. But it was really June and July of 2024 where I got really dedicated. I put in all the hours, I put in all the work, and the results did not speak for themselves at all.
So would you say that, did you do a practice test at that point? Like, did you have a kind of a mock exam that you did at that point, or did you do one earlier back in January 2024? So when was your first practice test? Let's start there.
So I did do a mock in, I think, January 2024. But when I say like I was very insincere about it, I was genuinely very insincere. That first of all, it was the wrong type of test because they were just shifting at that time, if you recall, just shifting from the old edition to the new edition. So it was quite a bit of a mess. It was in June 2024 when I did my first proper mock tests from, say, GMAT Club, not GMAT Club, sorry, from the official GMAT, Magoosh, some random mock I found online. So I did all of those things initially in June of 2024.
And what did your score? I realized that if you're doing mocks from that many sources, the scores will probably be all over the place. But how did you feel about them? Tell me roughly what you got. I don't know if you remember your official scores from AMA.com tests.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, when I started doing them with all these random companies, right, like random resources without being really focused, my scores, I don't think they were a good reflection of what I was going to get, because I would stop them and I would find the answer and then I would go back because I was so unsure of the way I was doing things. I would check every question, and sometimes I would change the wrong answers to the right one. And that is something that was a that's a habit that it's really really hard to let go of it. And this makes the actual exam very very tough because your anxiety multiplies.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I
Interesting.
would say,
Okay. So June, July. So you start studying in January. You're still finishing up university.
mhm,
We get to June and July, and you say, okay, time to take this seriously. You start studying hard. You're doing practice exams from all over the place, but not under test-like conditions. So you
not at
don't really have a feel for where you stand. And then did you take the exam then, or did
I
you
did
kind of drift away?
eventually, no, I did eventually do them under test-like conditions. I just didn't like, maybe the last four mocks were under test-like conditions. And then I did the exam in mid of July 2024, which is, I did it at home.
Okay.
And if there's one thing you should take away from this, don't do it at home. Unless you have a very debilitating maybe injury or a really strong reason to do it at home, don't do it at home. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. The power will go out. Your phone won't turn on. Your passport will expire the day before. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong the day. So do it at the test center. But yeah,
Okay. So those things all happened to you. So were there power outages, phone? Tell us about that testing experience. So we're still mid 2024,
oh
first
my
attempt
god.
at the exam. You're taking it at home. So tell us a little bit more about what happened, and did you even get to a score? Did they end up canceling it?
No, I did get a score. I got a 585. So just I think I missed talking about this, but the average score that I was getting was around 645, 665, 685. I mean, I was in those ranges already. Okay. But when I gave the exam, they asked me to move. So I went from one room to another at the start of the exam, which means, and the room, like, there was only one other room I could have gone to, and the lighting wasn't perfect there. So I actually had to set up a lamp to get that lighting. Um, then the power went out in the middle of the
Wow.
DI section twice, and they just froze. Like the
Wow.
screen just froze. That was too much stress for me. It was too much. Like it started off on the wrong foot, and it continued going on the wrong foot, and I couldn't take it. I didn't finish the exam. I think there was a question or two that I could not even submit, and that really tanked my score.
Okay. Actually, it sounds to me like, so if you had this horrible at-home testing experience, so you had to move rooms, rig some lighting, build a bonfire, all kinds of things to make it work, and then the power goes out, and that's when you built the bonfire. I'm making that up, obviously. And you still managed to score 585. That's actually pretty impressive. And I realize that that's a good, 60, 80 points below what you were scoring on your mocks, but that's actually not bad, all things considered. So what happened from there? So obviously, I mean, you get through an experience like that, and obviously you're going to feel terrible. Did you continue studying right away? How did you react? What did
I
you do?
was very disheartened. So first of all, I didn't know I could cancel my exam. I didn't know that was an option. So I left that, and I was very, very disheartened, and I just put the pen down. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm going to shift my energy somewhere else. And I don't want to go for a master's right now anyways. Why should I put all this pressure on myself? Why should I? Let's just let it be. So I let it be. I tried to start maybe, so this is July, maybe somewhere in like February 2025. I looked at the material again, but then I was already quite occupied with my job, and I was changing, and it was new. And so I officially looked at it again in October 2025.
Wow. So
Yeah,
more than a year later. So you went a
more than a
year
year later.
and 3, 4 months before you really got back into it. Wow. Okay. Before we get into round 2 of your prep, a couple things for anybody who's listening to this and going, wait, score canceling? You actually don't have to worry about that anymore. You choose exactly which scores you send to school. So that whole system has evolved quite a bit over the last few years. Don't worry about score canceling. It's not a thing anymore. Schools only see exactly the scores you choose to send them. And what I will say about the at-home GMAT, the experience that you had, Pearl, this is not uncommon, right? You can go on GMAT Club and you see plenty of people who go, "Wow, I had this horrendous experience with it." Now, we do know people that have had good experiences with it, but you have to have an environment that you can completely control. So if you live in a part of the world where there's internet outages or power outages, at-home GMAT is going to be a mess because when the power goes out, the proctors don't know what happened. They don't know if you're over there cheating or whatever. A lot of the times you can just get your score canceled. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they let you keep your score with 2 power outages. So it is possible to have a really exciting experience. It's just that you have to be able to control your environment, your computer. You have to have reliable internet, reliable power. For some people in some parts of the world, that is just not a possibility. So if you want them to deal with all that, go to a test center. If you feel comfortable dealing with all of that, there's very, very strict rules and guidelines. If you're comfortable following them, plenty of people have good experiences. Plenty of people have bad experiences, but it's often in situations like yours where you just can't control everything in your environment. So,
Can I say
um,
another like
absolutely.
something?
Yeah.
Um, I this was like the first time the power had cut maybe in months, and it's not something common. It was for a maintenance issue, and the electricity went out for like it was all maintenance issues. So really genuinely think about this because it's not that I'm in some village where I have 3 hours or 4 hours of power outages. I live in a city and I have continuous Wi-Fi, electricity, water, everything. And the second thing is most schools do not accept the at-home test. So you should really also think about what schools you want to apply to, and it will limit your choices if you choose the at-home test if you versus the center.
And I'll say that those policies are constantly changing. So if that's something you're concerned about, if you're watching this, check with your school, make sure they accept it. I think that's the best way to handle it. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, random things can happen, even if you are in a place with stability. In theory, my internet's really stable. I live in the United States. There are days when it goes out, it happens. And if you don't want to deal with that, go to the test center. It's their problem. All right, back to you. So a year goes by, a few more months go by. So your exam, July 2024, horrible at-home testing experience. October 2025, you're back to it. So what made you do it at that point? And how did that feel getting back into it after this really, really rough experience?
Um, I think that 1 year gave me the I wanna use a very Gen Z term. It healed me from that experience, and I wasn't looking at it like, oh, I've had my trust broken before, so I'm not going to trust anyone. I wasn't going into this experience like that. I think I learned a lot of things um, in that time, and about GMAT and about how I want to approach the GMAT. So I wasn't very worried. What happened is that I realized that I'm not very happy with where I am at. Like in work and in my professional career, and to grow I needed a master's degree, and I needed it now, so I couldn't wait for an MBA, which would have taken another couple of years. So that's why I decided to do my GMAT there and then, or I start studying for the GMAT there and then.
Awesome. Okay. So you're fresh, you're back, you've had that year off. Tell us a little bit about how you approached it. So what materials were you using and how are you thinking about that process of getting that score back up?
um, I had used a lot of material in my first time. Because at that time I was completely at home. I'd finished my undergrad and I wasn't working. I had access to all the resources and had all the time in the world. So I audited lots of free classes, free webinars. I watched YouTube videos. I think GMAT Club does a weekly Sunday, like 30-question test. I used to attend those. And there really wasn't anything under the sun that I hadn't seen at that point. Um,
And this
so
is from the first round of prep.
from the
So
first round of prep.
from July and June 2024, you're basically consuming everything. You're studying essentially full time, lots of free resources, lots of stuff on GMAT Club, everything. I guess maybe my question for you is in that first round, were there any particular materials that stood out? And again, we can look at that 585 and go, well, that's disappointing. But your skills were great. You obviously learned a lot. Your mock exams were mid 600s. What were the things that you felt were really effective for you in that first round?
The first thing I would say is GMAT Butler questions, and GMAT club questions, especially when they have like these. I think in May they have something for Labor Day. They have a challenge, 12-day challenge, or something like this. They have one for Christmas. I know that for a fact, for Halloween. So those are really beneficial because they get you in the habit of explaining your answers.
Yes.
And that's something that I picked up on. And why I didn't do Butler questions in my second attempt, but I did have that habit of why didn't I choose this? Especially in the verbal section, more so than quant, of course. So that is something
Awesome.
that was very helpful. The second thing is I studied this, the level of mathematics that is required for GMAT is maybe grade 9, grade 10 sort of level stuff. And it had been a while since I've done any of that math, rather any math at all, because in my undergrad degree, I didn't do math. It was all like, it was very weird. It wasn't math, the kind of math you'd expect. So I needed that refresher on how to solve inequalities and how to do algebra, like absolute values. I didn't remember any of those things. I mean, it'd been a really long time. So I think I used Magoosh for that, and they really helped me to refresh those basics. Um, Formally, it was nice to attend these webinars about verbal, which gave me that formal approach to, yeah, verbal. So these are sort of resources that I knew, and I picked up my verbal strategy in my first attempt, rather, and then I built my second quant strategy in my second attempt, and DI
Okay.
strategy in my second attempt. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So in the second round, so we're in 2025, October, November. So that's when you really started on the quant. And that's when you excuse me, that's when you used Magoosh, or was that in the first round?
No, I used all of these resources in the first round. In my second
First round.
round,
Okay.
I like finalized, or I actually had a formal strategy on how I would approach quant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say more about that. So formal strategy for how to approach quant. So what did that mean for you? So first
Okay.
time through in 2024, sounds like you did a lot of kind of refreshing the basics. Shout out to Magoosh, shout out to Bavin, awesome guy, co-owner of Magoosh. So got those basics back going again, got fresh, but there wasn't a strategy exactly, but there was later. So tell us more about that.
Um, you said, remember when I said that I sort of healed from my first, experience, first brush? So in the first attempt, what I was trying to do is the most very, very student-like approach which you have for school or university. I want to get as many questions right, and I want to get them all right. I want to do them all, and I want to get them all right. It doesn't approach. I think it doesn't work in the GMAT. I think you have to approach GMAT, and this is like the mentality that I had to build. This is not an aptitude test. This is a test. Like, what is the aim of the GMAT is to make sure you get into a good master's management sort of college. And what skills do you need in management? Time management, resource management, conflict management, and understanding your own capabilities. I think these are some skills you need to have as a good manager. And these are the skills, and like the GMAT tests, way more than can you tell me what the author is saying, or what is the probability one marble is red or one marble is green. So that was my quant strategy.
So say more about that functionally, because I think what you're suggesting is if you approach the GMAT maybe as a whole, but maybe quant in particular as a perfectionist. So we might take exams in high school or in university where the expectation is, hey, the professor, the teacher told me this stuff, I can learn all this stuff. And then I go on the exam and I can show that I know all the stuff and I'll get 100%. That is something that is very possible for us in a lot of educational contexts. You get to the GMAT and very, very few people can manage to get all 21 of those quant questions right in 45 minutes. It is designed for that to be not impossible, but exceedingly difficult. Very, very tiny proportion of people do it. So it sounds like what you're suggesting is once you drop that perfectionism and think in terms of, well, I've got a resource and it's 45 minutes of time and focus, and I have to choose how to spend that. It sounds like that was the mindset shift where you said, hey, scarce resource, limited resource of time, how I spend that is what's going to determine my success. Does that kind of capture how you were thinking about it?
Exactly.
And
What are my
then what did
strengths
that
I want? And then how can I best allocate these 45 resources to these 21 questions, considering what I'm good at and what I'm not good at?
awesome. So what did that mean in practice? Was it just letting go of questions when you looked at them and said, I might be able to get this. It might take me forever. You guessed and moved on from those. Was it mostly that, or was there something else to it?
Yeah. I think there are two things about this. First of all, like I said, I audited a lot of resources and I used a lot of resources. And what that means is everyone has their own ideas on how you should approach a question, how you should skip a question. For example, something that they'll say a lot, especially in verbal, is that you should try to get, not verbal, sorry, in quant, is that you should be able to solve them without paper. Some people will say this. There are people that have said this. Try to solve quant questions without needing paper. And I know myself, I'm not capable of that. So I don't have the time. The 3 months is not enough for me to build that skill set. So I need to double down on being faster at solving them on paper. So that's understanding myself.
Excellent.
Then the second thing would be probability and combination. I think every other person, if not every person on that does the GMAT dislikes this topic because the questions here, A, as a concept, it's a little tougher to grasp, and B, it's the language can be very confusing. And I realized that this is the case for me. So I did not dedicate as much time into this rather than, for example, inequalities or absolute values, where I felt that it was just practice that was taking, like, that was the difference between a zero and a one. So I spent a lot more time doing those types of questions. I did do
Awesome.
PNC because I knew that there could be some questions, but still, I didn't spend like 10 days pouring myself, oh my God, no, I have to get this, I have to get this, I have to get this. No.
Awesome. And I don't know if you remember this specific of a detail, but on your actual exam, when you got this 585, did you see any probability or combinatorics? Do you remember?
Yes, I got 3.
3. Okay, that's actually more than usual. So when we look at all the official materials, you typically see about 2 or 3% of each probability, combinations, permutations. So it's not a huge proportion of the text. Actually got maybe unlucky for you given your taste, because 3 is actually very much on the high side. It's possible, certainly, but it's
Yeah.
on the high side. We sometimes talk to people who walk out of the exam and go, wait a minute, I didn't see any of those things. More common is to see just 1, maybe 2.
I saw just 1 in my second attempt. So
Okay. All right. So quant for you was much more about, okay, I'm gonna take a look at all the resources out there, get my basics solid, which is something you did in 2024, and then really think, what is it that unlocks me personally as a test taker? What makes me better? Tell us a little bit about verbal and data insights. So verbal, obviously you're amazing at verbal. You speak 4 languages. You aced the verbal section. Maybe there's not much to say there, but tell us a little bit about your prep for those 2 parts of the exam.
okay, so verbal, I think all the credit for my verbal goes to EGMAT. I don't remember the lady's name, but it's a lady that takes the EGMAT RC or CR webinars. Unfortunately, I don't recall it, but she is the reason. I would say she was the strategy for my verbal. So
Excellent.
I always had a very good knack on verbal. I am an avid reader. I read a lot. I read very quickly. I write. So verbal was not too tough. In fact, what I did was I used GMAT Club to get a quant peer tutor. So he would tutor me in the quant, and I would tutor him back in um, for like the verbal section. And I think that also, again, like I said, when you explain your answers, you get better at them. So that was my strategy. I didn't work too much on it. Uh,
That's fantastic. What about data insights? What did you do on that side?
Data insights, I would say data insights, it was again a mentality shift of not to be afraid. It's just an exam. More than anything, it's just an exam. And especially because last time I missed a question and the power went out, and I had this fear like, oh my God, I'm incapable. But that's not true. It's just an exam. So once you shift from that, second thing is I attended Jamboree sessions, live sessions. There, the teacher told me this trick to save time because I felt like data insights was mostly a time management game more so than anything else, which was to skip these multiple MSR questions, multiple source reasoning, just guess and move on and then come back to them, which is something I didn't know. But that was like the catalyst to improve my data insight because then I had time and I could go back and a question or two is not going to kill you on the GMAT, but a missed one is. So
And it sounds like for you, like that helped, did that kind of help calm you down as well? So it's, hey, I don't have to battle these 3 tabs from the multi-source reasoning. I don't have to battle that into the ground. And instead you could kind of breathe a little bit through the other 17 questions.
Yeah, I had like 10 minutes left at the end of my data insights.
Excellent.
Yeah,
And so then you went back, did you do the full MSR set?
I did do the full MSR sets because MSR sets are not tough. They just need a little bit of time to find the information. I thoroughly enjoyed MSR sets when I would do them in my practice. But you need that time and you want to double check things because you have so many, like you are clicking 2 or 3 boxes and even one of them is wrong, the entire question goes. So you have to be a bit more careful. You need that time. So I would suggest that you skip and come back to it later if you find that time is a problem for you in the exam.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of things that are great. So as you went from that 2024 attempt to the 2025, lots of introspection, lots of thinking. Some of it was teaching, explaining things on GMAT Club, explaining things to the kind of peer that you were working with. So again, the more you teach, the more you learn. Sometimes you learn more as a teacher than you do as a student, if that makes any sense. At least I feel that way teaching for 26 years. There are things I didn't understand at all until I started teaching them. And then I was like, oh, that's what we're doing. This is amazing. Meanwhile, my poor students lost. So lots that sounds great. Introspection, the teaching other people. You found the materials that worked well for you. You sampled so many things from this world of practice materials. Fantastic. How were your practice exams at that stage?
Um, Much better because I did them under testing conditions.
Good.
So the first thing I did is because I was very active on GMAT Club, and what that meant is that I had a lot of these points that they give you, and I redeemed those points for the 3 month GMAT Club Test Pro or something, Pro or Elite, something like that. 3 months of that, and that means I got 15 tests. Um, Again, this goes to say I really did explain lots of things on the GMAT Club because I want for my improvement. So I used that. I used a couple of those, and you'll see fantastic explanations for every question, why you got it right, why you got it wrong, and then I went to the official mocks, and this time I used the mocks properly. The official ones I used all the way from 1 to 4, and I repeated 3 and 4. Initially, I was quite disheartened. Actually, I felt like I wasted a year because I was getting roughly the same score. But you have to
So
move on.
mid 600s at that on
Yeah,
those first few months.
680, 690, something like that. I was like, okay, I was getting this last. I should have just given the exam again at that time instead of wasting a year. But I think there was a lot of growth that happened in that 1 year. So
Okay.
yeah, so the marks were good. I would suggest if someone's short on time just to do the official mocks because even if the other ones are accurate, you will never have that feeling inside of you that oh, this is exactly what you're supposed to score. And depending on how you perceive yourself, you're going to say, oh, this exam is too easy and I'm actually going to get a worse score in the real one, or it's too hard and I'm going to get a better one. There's no standardization, so just do the official ones. You don't need to do 20 mocks. 3, 4 are plenty.
Yeah, and those non-official exams and they get better and better. I mean, GMAT Club's tests have gotten so much better over the years. There's more improvements coming. I think it's okay if I say that to everybody. And yet any non-official practice test will feel different because the questions are written by different people. They're produced differently. The score might be accurate for you. It might be inaccurate for you. But I think that's a really good point that when that difference in how the exam feels can easily get in your head. If you do a whole lot of mock exams from a non-official source, you get to the actual exam, it feels different. Maybe you start feeling that somehow those results weren't valid. I think that's a really good point. Okay, so when did you finally sign up for the test? What was the moment when you said, okay, now I'm ready?
I signed up for I'd say late November, early December, maybe first week of December. I signed up for the test, and the reason I signed up has nothing to do with my prep per se. It was all to do with my deadlines for my applications. So I could not delay it any further than the 11th of December. So I did it on the 11th.
Awesome. How did you feel walking in? Tell us about test day. So tell us about how you got ready, what you did going to the exam. So again, your first exam experience was so nerve-wracking, also with the at-home exam. What did you do differently to prepare yourself walking in for that next attempt?
Firstly, I didn't do it at home. I learned my lesson the first time around. I took a test center, and I took a test center that I knew relatively well. I mean, I didn't know the exact building, but like the exact hall, but I've known the university. Lots of my friends go to that university. So I knew it very well. The first thing I did is I didn't set it up for a time that's unnatural for me. I set it at a time that's very convenient at like noon. I think my exam was noon or 12:30, something like that. Considering that I like to wake up a little later at 9, it was well. And I really hammered it into myself that this is just a test. It's just a test. I can do it again in 15 days. It's just a test. So
And then once the test started, how did you feel? Did it feel different as that first question pops up on the screen? How did you react? How did you feel? Was it natural? You're just back doing the same thing you were doing in your mock exams. Did it feel different? How did you feel in that moment?
I think it was the same. I did the mocks and I felt like this is just one more exam. It's just one more. It's okay if I mess it up. I've done this. I know I'm capable. I know I'm very capable because I got scores above what I wanted once or twice in my mocks. So I knew I was capable and it's just a test. So when I went to the exam hall, I was like, I'm going to do my best. And then it's okay. That's all I can do. I can put in the work and then that's it.
Awesome. Anything surprise you on the exam?
Not really. I think what surprised me was that they checked my glasses entering into the test center. That was very surprising, but nothing on the test was very shocking. Um, there
Nice.
was a question or two that I did get stuck on, and I was in my DI. I still did run out of time, because I messed up a little bit, but I just got done with the questions, and then I was like, okay, as long as I don't leave anything empty, I'm fine.
Awesome. And were you surprised by the score? So obviously we know the punchline. 685, perfect score on verbal, really strong scores on Quant and Data Insights. Were you surprised? How did you react?
Oh, I don't think it's going to be very appropriate to say this, but I think people from my like from my background, will realize that I was not quite happy with the score. I was surprised by the verbal. A 90 is amazing, but for quant and DI, I was hoping for a little bit more. I was expectant, but I think 685 is a pretty good score. And once you go through all that effort, you realize 685 is also not that easy to achieve.
It's a phenomenal score. I mean, this is something that is at the median or above the median at every school on the planet, right? I mean, I don't know that there are any MBA, MIM management programs of any sort that have averages above 685. So obviously a phenomenal score. And I completely understand the feeling. You had mock exams that were over 100. I know some of your quant and DI scores were well into the 80s. So I understand that feeling that, yeah, but I could have done a little better. I think almost everybody has that to some degree. Sometimes that is just overwhelmed by the feeling of relief that you're done. Most people kind of go, well, there's something here. I could have gotten a couple more points, but 685 is phenomenal, right? I mean, this is way up there. It is something that is competitive in any school on the planet. So that 100-point turnaround for you, and obviously you worked like crazy for it over a long period, a couple of periods over the course of a couple of years. I guess before we finish this up, what is your advice to people who struggle with that test execution? So what we see over and over, we see it in the debriefs on GMAT Club. We see it with our private tutoring students at GMAT Ninja all the time, that people go, well, wait a minute, I studied and studied and studied, and my best mock exams are this, and then I go into the actual exam and I perform far worse. And I think you're a wonderful example of somebody who overcame that, who had a really terrible test day experience, very aware that you have nervousness walking into the exam and anxiety in general around the exam, and then you went into your test day and you overcame it all. So I guess what's the biggest thing that you want people who might struggle with that? And I think most test takers struggle with that to some degree. What's the biggest thing you'd like them to take away from your experience with it?
Yeah. So you are the norm. Everybody that says they have text anxiety or something went bad, it's going to happen to you. If you are someone that has even the slightest bit of test anxiety, you're going to face that. So listen and learn to these from these people and accept your reality and build a trust in yourself. So what that means is practice, 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 practice. Because if you didn't put in the work, you're not going to get any sort of result. You have to put in the work. The second thing is replicate test day conditions as much as you can, because when it's something uncomfortable, something new, you want to minimize that impact. Don't do new things on that test day. Don't choose a test center you've never been to. Don't wear clothes you've never worn. Don't wear glasses you've never worn. Don't tie your hair in some new way, which is going to maybe give you a headache. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just do everything that you normally would do, and give yourself time. Again, something that I would say is don't do what I did and test one day before your application. Give yourself maybe 10-15 days of time so you can retest. So that way, even if you don't retest, you know in your mind that, oh, I can retest. I think that's basically the key idea you need to overcome test anxiety. And in any case, you're going to get some amount of test anxiety. You cannot completely overcome it, but you can mitigate it, you can minimize it, you can try, and that's all you can do.
Amazing. Pearl, with that, thank you so much for doing this with us. Anybody out there watching, work in tech or anything that has a product cycle, you need a product manager, speaks 4 languages, has her head screwed on, really introspective, thoughtful person. Give her a call, reach out. We can find her on GMAT Club. Reach out to me. We'll find her for you. So Pearl, again, thank you so much for doing this. Thanks you so much for sharing your experiences. And thank you everybody out there for watching.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thanks so much.